listening to The Edge, everything bass fishing, coming to you worldwide from Megaware KeelGuard Studios.
Aaron, another year rolls by and another school session begins. And we're in school right here on BassEdge Radio for the September 1st edition. Aaron, episode 383. Excited to kick off basically another fall, right? I mean, I know that it's still late summer, but you know, September has that traditional fall beginning, right?
Absolutely. You know, you feel those nights cooling down and kind of the fog in the lower lying areas as those cool mornings start. Man, it certainly does get me in the mood to start the fall fishing. And Kurt, you know, before we get too far, I know you have an episode just packed with stuff, but we've got to mention our friends at Megaware KeelGuard that make all of this possible and have since day one. The Flex Step, the first do-it-yourself keel protector, the battery guard, all of those things can be found at keelguard.com. And Kurt, as we roll in, you know, speaking about the fall going by, man, what a busy couple weeks since we were last at the mic. Spencer Sheffield, I think Pro Circuit champ.
Yes.
Kyle Hall, Champlain. Man, we've got to talk about those weights. Austin Felix, Angler of the Year race as we tape. I mean, you know, the list just goes on and on.
It is, man. Things are wrapping up here in 2022. I think there's one more event left, even on the Bass Pro Tour side. So, yeah, man, let's hit that Spencer Sheffield first. How about it? Spencer taking the Pro Circuit title and the $200,000 cha-ching that goes along with that deal, man. Spencer, Aaron, you know, you're right there close to Arkansas, being a Missouri boy. And, you know, Spencer Sheffield's dad, Ron Sheffield, long time, right, legend in the sport, man. And Spencer started out tournament fishing on the highest level of the FLW Tour very young, man, and had some great success. Went through a little bit of a reset in life, I think is appropriate to say. And, man, he came out smelling like a freaking rose. This guy has put in the time, the effort. He's a live scope expert. So congratulations to Spencer Sheffield. Super happy for him. Yeah. We'll have to get him on an episode here in the next several shows. So excited about that.
Yeah, and you know, you kind of mentioned the forward facing sonar, and then we kind of go over to Champlain. Now, curious, I mean, you've got to believe that the forward facing sonar is having an impact on some of these weights and just some of these fish that are being targeted, like on Champlain. Man,
Aaron, it's insane. We have never seen weights like this at Lake Champlain. You see the random 20-pound sack, you know, maybe low 20s, but in the Pro Circuit event, you see multiple 20-pound. I think it was 8 or 9 20-pound bags day one. You had the Toyota Series event just after the Pro Circuit event. So Champlain beat to a bull pulp. You know, 150 anglers out there whipping up the water. The next week you have the Toyota Series event, and they have something ridiculous like 14 20-pound bags. Man, some of these bags 21 and a half, upwards of 22 pounds. Aaron, we have never seen it. Now, sure, is there some growth in the smallmouth and just the overall fertility of the fishery? Sure, you could add that in as a factor. But really what's happening, bro, is that anglers are catching fish they have never seen or known were there before. Anglers fishing over 30, 40, 50, 60 feet of water, catching fish that are roaming on bait. And I think that's why we're seeing these a little bit better weights, is because these fish that are being targeted out there in you know, La La Land with live scope, dude, they've been feeding, right?
Right. The best thing about it, right, is you are chasing fish that are actively feeding, right? So you're not trying to get a school necessarily fired up.
Absolutely. And we've all known how Champlain has been a fishery and game of ounces, right? I mean, 8, 10, 15 ounces could be the difference between 10, 15, or 20 spots in a tournament. Now, with live scope and chasing these fish that are chasing these bait, you're catching a fish that is 2, 3, 4 ounces bigger than you might targeting boulders or something like that. Now I say all this, Aaron, and let me quantify that. Wayne Vaughn, who was leading the event and the Toyota Series the first 2 days, he was actually catching him in more traditional methods, Carolina rig, top water, that kind of thing. So it's not like you have to, but if you ask the majority of the field in the Pro Circuit, a majority of the field in the Toyota Series, what is going on is a lot of those little bit better quality fish are being caught over that deep water with that live scope. So super, super interesting. We didn't quite see the same thing at Oahe though.
No, and that was a little different scenario, but a very, very neat story. Hopefully we get to talk to him, in the coming episodes. But what a day! And kind of figuring out that bite, I believe ended up being like a Carolina rig / drop shot, if I remember that correctly.
That's exactly right. So Austin Felix kind of got teed up on the Carolina rig from Lee Livesey. They were both, Oahe fished a little bit. I don't want to say small, but the fish were really grouped up, so the anglers were finding a lot of the same fish. So there was a little bit of crowding because of the way the fishery was setting up. But you're exactly right. A lot of good fish caught on a Carolina rig over there in Oahe, which was pretty interesting. Throwing that little, we just mentioned Wayne Vaughn, catching some fish on Carolina rig at Champlain, but over there at Oahe, same kind of deal, man. I heard a lot of people kind of throwing some negativity out there on Oahe because you had Austin Felix had the biggest bag of the event, 23 pounds. You saw a lot of 18, 19-pound bags. I don't want to say a lot. It wasn't no Thousand Islands, right? But some quality bags, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, up to 23 pounds. And there was some guys that struggled, and, some guys had 4 pounds, 5 pounds, 6 pounds, 7 pounds. And I heard some negativity or saw some negativity there on social media. And I'm like, man, this is what makes a great bass fishing tournament. Going out there, putting in the work, finding the fish. It was obvious if you found them or you didn't. You couldn't just go down the bank and just start jacking bass. Whereas you go to a fishery that's just on fire, then, kind of anybody's game. You hit the right bank, then it can happen. But this was a fishing man's game. So I liked the Oahe tournament, and man, we were rolling right into Wisconsin on this last elite event as we taped the show, right?
Yeah. Well, to your earlier comment, haters gonna hate, man. I don't know. I don't understand that.
Well, it's just anyway, negativity, and I'm like, man, I like it when some guys, yeah.
I do too. So
talking about catching them, obviously everybody knows now that Polinick left the door open after Oahe. You got Brandon Lester, who we just had on in our last episode, and Chris Johnson. Man, you got 3 guys vying for the title right now, and man, we're taping this as it goes on. Fog, as you mentioned, just a little, opening the show there. And it's probably going to play a factor. I think you want to see some short days over here on the river, sits in a valley over there. So you're probably going to have some fog delays. You're not going to get a full 8-9 hours of fishing in every tournament day. So that is going to play a factor. But, Mississippi River, Aaron, one of those fisheries that ounces play a big difference. And, the difference between 10 pounds and 15 pounds can be 100 spots. In the standing. Right. And word on the street is they're biting over there at the Mississippi River at La Crosse.
Fantastic. Well, we will certainly stay tuned for that piece. But concerning BassEdge, we've got fairly unique. I'm really excited about this next segment here, Kurt.
Yeah, we're going to bring in some BASS brass. So excited to talk about the combine, man. High school fishing moving to a new level. Bring in Hank. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Listen for it. Hank Weldon talking about BASS High School Combine. Y'all got to stay. Check this out. Then, of course, don't forget, right after that segment, we're going to have our featured angler, guy that's been smoking them on the smallmouth, and just an all-around great dude. So excited for this show, Aaron. Let's rock and roll. We'll be right back after these messages.
Nitro Performance Bass Boats. Get pro-level performance with the Nitro Z18, the official boat of Major League Fishing. The Z18, with its nimble handling and versatility, sports many of the features in the larger boats in the line, like a Guardian Live Well, a heavily insulated cooler, dual 8-foot rod storage, and our smooth and fast NVT hull. Every Nitro boat is laid out to do one thing very well: catch fish. Enormous front decks, up to 45 square feet on the Z21, allow maximum mobility when battling unruly bass, and feature low-profile gunnels for ease of skipping, pitching, flipping, or landing fish. Nitro Performance Bass Boats, pure fishing machines.
Aaron, as mentioned there at the end of the intro, man, we got some BASS brass with us on today's show, man. This special segment discussing a cool program that I believe is in its second year. It's the BASS High School Combine, coming up later this month, September 16th through 18th in Decatur, Alabama. Here to tell us more and dive into the benefits for high schoolers looking to make the move to college bass fishing is BASS guru Hank Weldon. Hank, thanks for stopping by on BassEdge Radio.
Man, guys, happy to be on, and talk all things combine. It'll be a little change of scenery, but I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Well, Hank, we're glad to have you. And speaking of change of scenery, I'll let this be a rhetorical question if you feel like it needs to be, but it has to be a little refreshing change from, all the talk about the new elite qualifying system in the BASS Open. So we're going to shift gears and I want to get into this high school combine program that BASS has put together. Is really a special opportunity for high school students from all over the country. How did that program come about?
It kind of, did you guys ever think we'd be talking about this with fishing too, by the way, combine for high school anglers to punch their ticket to a college university. But, it kind of was a culmination really of many years and kind of just, I hate to kind of reduce it to this, but just somewhat of idle chit chat with coaches at college events and parents at high school events. And we found out that there was kind of a need for lack of a better term, a one-stop shop, right, for that high school angler and that college coach to where they could go to one place for one weekend, see kids from all over the country, and evaluate them and see if they would be a good fit for their program, not only athletically, but also academically. And so that was really kind of through the years, that was kind of, we tossed it around. We called it the showcase. Do we do some kind of career fair? And we kind of landed on this combine, which really is a combine and career fair, or almost like college recruiting fair hybrid is what it is. But, I think it probably would have happened before COVID, had COVID not stopped the world for 2 years. But we're glad to have it in its year two. Had a great year one, got some great sponsors, a title and a presenting, and we're excited. A couple of weeks away, and it's going to be a good one.
Hank, there's some restrictions in attendance that really make this program, it's already a special program, but really extremely special for the students in attendance. I noticed through the BASS media that it's limited to 100 is the capacity for the students to be able to attend. Have you already filled this year's attendance for the combine?
Oh, yeah, it's full. We've got a small waiting list. And you're right. It's going back to, again, we've got 3 days really to process and get 100 students in front of 20 universities. So there's really not a lot of time when you really break that down. So that 100 number is still that manageable number, is why it's so low. And it's not cheap, it's a $500 entry for a high school student, but they get a lot with that, and we can talk about that maybe a little bit later. But, it's extremely limited, but in order for it to be an experience that is worth the anglers coming, that's why we put that cap on there.
Sure, that makes perfect sense. Now, I saw registration was in the beginning of June is when you guys kicked off the registration, just so that students and parents listening to the podcast can know for 2023, how fast is this filling up for BASS? How popular has this combine become? Obviously, it's going to continue to gain momentum, but at this point, how long did it take for you to fill those 100 slots?
So in the first 5 hours, we had 75 registrations.
Wow.
And then it rocked along. Yeah, it was quick. And, and then we had we sat on those 25 for probably about 2-3 weeks. So, and I think it'll probably fill up even faster just based on what I've seen in years past with the college and high school fishing tournaments. So, it could have filled up in 5 hours. We thought it was going to, but about 2-3 weeks is what it took to get to that 100 mark.
Okay, that's great to know. Last year, I read 19 colleges represented. You mentioned 20 there just a minute ago. How many colleges are going to be represented this year at the combine in attendance?
So I think our official count now, and then you guys will see a release going out with this. I think we're at either 18 or 19. There's one school that was trying to work around the schedule. One of the unfortunate things, and it's just the way with scheduling goes, Kurt, you know it all too well with fishing, is we have a college conflict. There was a big college tournament in the spring that had to get moved due to rough water or bad weather. And so that is on top of the weekend that we're on. We tried to shuffle some things to get it to where it was not on top of that. But, as you know, with fishing and scheduling, it is never easy. But we're excited. It's a good number. We've got some big schools coming. So it's going to be an exciting event for the students and the colleges.
So, Hank, twofold question here. One, for those that are attending in person, right, the 100 that are showing up, what's your thoughts on how they can arrive prepared, ready to, pardon the pun, lure a scholarship away? But also maybe even for those that aren't part of that 100, but that are interested in pursuing a scholarship, advice to them as well.
Right. Yeah. So with the students coming and we try to drive this communication, your angling skill set's going to probably be where it needs to be. I wouldn't worry too much about practicing for the casting competition or the long distance. You certainly can. I would focus more on the academic side and presenting yourself well to those schools, because here's the deal. When we talk about these scholarship schools that offer scholarships for anglers to attend and fish, they're not getting a full ride based on just their fishing ability. Right. They don't have the budget allocation for that. So what they do is they subsidize that with academic scholarships or some other scholarship fund or grant program within that school. So if you can position yourself as a student that not only brings a sharp angling skill to the table, but also a great academic skill, there's going to be more money to be offered to those students versus someone who's just purely putting all their eggs in the angling skill bracket. Now, that can also be successful too. You just kind of open up, you broaden that horizon, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, so I would have that resume and those academic credentials ready to go with those schools when you get there. We had a kid walking around last year in a full suit, so he was all about the presentation portion to the anglers. And then what was the second part? I got
just for those. I think you've covered it as well. But even for those that are not attending, but right, still interested in pursuing, a scholarship with regards to fishing.
Yeah. So, it's fun to say this, have that angler portfolio put together. And I would lead, with, you got your resume right. Every high school angler is going to have that, high school student. And, approach it like you would with a normal scholarship application to an institution. But just remember that you get to add your angling experience in that too. So, I would always lead with academics and fishing as the secondary part. That's been kind of my perception on really what these schools are looking for. Right.
And then a footnote, of course, that, long-term 384 episode listener of BassEdge, 383 episodes goes a long way too, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. Yes. They should put that on their resume, of course.
There you go.
Hank,
exactly.
One of the cool things, right? You got this combine. The first thing I thought of, right, was the NFL combine. And then, of course, you guys have some skills competition, I guess you might call it, or skills displays that the student anglers can show while they're there at the event. How important is that? You mentioned, practicing's okay, but it's not like, the face of probably what most college are exactly looking for, although it is a part of it, right? So how important is that process from the combine perspective, right, to be skilled at that level that you can display that in front of people?
Sure. Yeah. No. So that great question. And that kind of goes back to why we felt a need for this, because we hear, and I'm going to single out a couple of families, and everybody listening probably knows who I'm talking about, but every kid's number one fan is their parents. Right. And so little Johnny's the best angler on the face of the planet. And they're telling a coach this, and without the combine, the coach either has to go and get in the boat with that angler at a certain weekend, that could be hundreds of miles away, and they can tell very quickly. I mean, you guys know, when you put a rod in a kid's hand, if he knows how to use that thing on an elevated level. So that's what I mean by, your angling skill is probably already defined, or it's not going to be able to be sharpened too much. An angler could maybe potentially get better, but those coaches are going to be able to sit there and watch how a kid does a roll cast and drops that jig right there on that target, or skips it under a little obstacle that we have set up for them, or bombs out a pencil popper, out 80 yards. That's the idea, is so a coach can really assess, is this kid everything he says he is on paper? And that's what those skill challenges are. There's 3 of them. And, we've got long distance casting accuracy. And the third one, we're still kind of tweaking a little bit, but it's going to be a good all around assessment of what these anglers can do.
Yeah, I like it. It sounds like a truth test a little bit. Like
Yeah,
truth or dare.
exactly.
You can throw a bait caster, right? Some people would say yes, but not all bait caster tossers are created equal, especially at a young age. When you're in high school, there's still a lot of skill sets being learned at that age. So that's
awesome.
a great concept.
Last year, the kids were trying. We did a line to line test, knot tying, and they had figured out. One kid had figured out how to tie an FG knot in like 35 seconds. I still don't know how he did it. But he had, you got these kids that can put a leg over their shoulder, right, and hold the line almost to tie it. It was entertaining to watch. But I was like, no way, and he knocked it out. So that was entertaining to watch.
That is cool, man. It sounds like a lot of fun being had. Man, you talked earlier about the cost. $500 is not chump change. But when you look at the opportunity to meet 18, 19, 20 colleges in a weekend 3-day setting, if you think about what it would take to travel to 2 or 3 colleges versus seeing, exposure to 18, 19, or 20 colleges, and this is really a fantastic deal for these students. I mean, you cannot get a value like this, in my opinion, anywhere else. You could do some Zoom calls, but you're not going to get that face-to-face, attention, like you are going to be here. So I think this is a great program. I'm quickly interested to see what's your take on that. First of all, do you see it kind of holding at that $500 level for a few years to come? Or, I mean, you got to admit, this is a fantastic value for the 100 students that get on board.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the amount of swag that the kids get alone is going to get close to that value. But, I mean, when you're talking about the $500, that includes 2 nights of hotel rooms, a meal Friday night, breakfast, and this is for parents too, mom and a dad. So 3 people, a breakfast on Saturday, lunch Saturday, and a large breakfast on Sunday. So when you start breaking down that alone, I don't think someone could take their kid to Decatur, Alabama and spend that time, together and going out and fishing and probably not keep it under $500 plus exclusive access, with only 100 other anglers or 99 other anglers in front of those colleges. So, as far as that, it's like everything. We're having to, when we look at the budget, we're having to look at, are we covering everything we need to in terms of cost? And, it's really the outside factors. What are hotel rates going to go to next year? What are, food rates going to go to next year? But, we're going to try to keep it as close to 500 as possible.
Well, I think it's at an exceptional value already. Aaron has a daughter that is a tennis player. And Aaron, you could speak to this a little bit, running around different colleges and doing the tennis thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, they do a similar deal, showcase tournaments, right, to where you part of the country. But I mean, as you know, Hank, like you already mentioned, I promise you, we didn't get any hotels or breakfast or food or swag. I mean, you're lucky if you got a sweat towel to dry off on. So no, I think that's fantastic. And just what you have created and the opportunity for that is tremendous. I'm curious to know, and this actually goes to both Hank, you and Kurt. Do you feel that the portal system, will have an impact on college fishing, or is that going to be, kind of protected, I guess, will fishing not be a part of that, only in other sports?
It's a good question. It's like, who's going to house it, right? Who's going to run it? Maybe that's a business idea for you guys to establish yourself as the portal folks. I don't know. It's the reason it won't, because there's really no like transfer rule restrictions or, any kind of things that would create an angler to have to abide by a rule that would prohibit them from moving around to different schools, right? We're just not to that point yet. It could happen. I was thinking about this before we came on the podcast, is when do we start having pro days? Like Kurt, you have a pro day camp, or Aaron, y'all do that, in the summertime, something like that. For these guys, for these kids, with this combine being successful, that could be kind of a next step within the sport of fishing.
Yeah. I've been doing a youth fishing camp for, it's been about 11 years. And, man, we've had a few a few anglers that have went to last year's combine, actually. They're with BASS. And, man, it's an opportunity where really they can, just increase that skill set. Like you say, once you kind of get that, where you can throw a bait cast or do some of those fundamentalistic approaches, but really instead of chasing waypoints out there that somebody gave you, but actually understanding fish movements, patterns, behaviors, and how the Cody Huffs and some of these other great college anglers that have come through the system understand actually how to freaking catch, well, most importantly, locate a bass, then catch a bass is so important part of the process that I think when you're young, it's about getting the bite, right? And then you start putting those things together a little bit later. But if you can start when you're young about understanding the locations, why, who, what, when, where, why, then catching those bass, you are 10 steps ahead of a counterpart for sure.
Absolutely.
Lastly, Hank, I want to fire this at you. Have you seen any? You probably know if there's more than I'm aware of. I've heard of the National Scouting Report, kind of seeing those guys, what that group is doing, kind of an independent agency on that path of putting together almost like a max preps. For fishing where, some anglers might get a star rating or just show interest that they're wanting to go to college and fish at the next level. Do you see any movement from the bass perspective to partner or maybe create a system of high school rankings across the country?
Right. Yeah, we're aware of those guys. And we've actually, we've had some discussions with them. Is there a good mix here with the combine and star ranking the students and stuff? And we've even thrown that around, but, and as you guys know, it's, you don't have, and I'm not trying to roadblock it or anything, but you don't have that one set of athletic standards in the sport of fishing, right? It's kind of all over the board. So how do you rank this kid that competed here versus that kid that competed there? So, yes, I would love to get there because within our recruiting guide, pretty cool thing. I know you guys have seen our media guide that we put out every year, and especially for the Classic, but we've got what we call a recruiting guide for the combine that all the coaches get, all the students get. And it's kind of like their cliff notes of the combine. So you can kind of get an idea which students you want to see before you even get there. Nice. And we would love to put a star ranking to that, but it's just we don't have a way to really quantify it in an accurate way that would be fair across all 100 students, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And
it does.
If we can figure that out, I would love to do that because, here's your 4-star angler. I mean, ideally, and I know we've got some great students, what we would like for the combine to get to, or at least, the national big one, is the top 100 uncommitted students, right? That would be the ultimate goal. I don't know, that's probably an unreachable goal at this point, but I think we've got a lot of your top level students who haven't committed yet. And, and then when I say the top level, do we start regionalizing some combines and, have them at college tournaments, high school tournaments. So you can see we kind of just got there, for lack of a better term, it's cliche, but we're hoping we're at kind of the tip of the iceberg with this, and it's absolutely going to only expand.
Whoever ends up running it in the future, whether that's you or I know your role with BASS has been fluid over the last, 12 to 18 months, with all the different things and movement that's going around in the organization, all positive movement. But I see this as a multi-event scenario. Right. This one is not going to last for the next 2 or 3 years. It will turn into 2 or 3 or 5 events throughout the year, maybe on a regional basis or something like you mentioned. But yeah, this is a great program, man.
And I would be remiss. I got to give our committee a shout out because while you hear me talking about it, and it kind of became the brainchild of the tournament department. We have involved. It's almost like the Classic in terms of, it's certainly not that big, but in terms of involving a person or multiples out of each department at Bass to really come together and plan this thing. And they have just all taken ownership of this. And I really think that's one of the reasons it's been so successful is because it's really been a fun project, kind of just, you kind of have the ability to say, well, let's try this. Let's try that. Let's see what happens. This would be neat. It's with it being brand new, kind of like building the college or high school platform. From a tournament side, you can just kind of have fun with it, right? You kind of put yourself in the coach's shoes and in the angler's shoes and say, well, what's going to work best? What's the overall mission here? And they've done a great job. And, we hope it's bigger and better. I think it will be. But, we've got a few things we're tweaking and changing, and we're going to get that to a model. Hopefully that'll be able to be dispersed throughout the United States for multiple events here pretty soon.
Well, Hank, I mean, certainly, if the growth of this, I see on a pretty steep trajectory, like Kurt mentioned. I think you're looking at multiple venues for this in the coming years. But more importantly, what do you want it to be? Hats off to you guys for just continuing that tradition, right, of whoever carries that shield, and certainly BASS has always been a leader in that tradition from day one. So again, appreciate just being cutting edge and continuing to expand and help promote our sport and the conservation that stands behind it.
Oh yeah, and that don't forget about that conservation. That's a huge thing. But I always have fun talking with professional anglers. So Kurt, I'll apologize to you personally because all this is doing with like our EQ. We're not going to talk about the EQ, but this is my one mention of it is only making, I feel like, these anglers stronger, better, more equipped when they get to that pro level. And it's just making this competition crazy at the top level, I feel like. And this is a part of that puzzle, is that combine and getting these colleges better equipped, more equipped. It's like, do you run the spread? Or are you a dive team? Right. So those coaches now are able to fill their roster with their flippers, their drop shotters, their top water guys. I can keep going on, and their live scope guys. And they're just diversifying their team. And all these kids are talking to each other, and they're all learning from each other, and they're all getting better. And we're seeing that competition elevated in college, and then to the nation, and then to the opens, and then to the elite. So it's just so Kurt, I'm sorry we're making it tougher for you guys.
Look, I completely agree with the sentiment, but don't be sorry. All of us that have a passion in bass fishing, what we want is growth. What we want is a better sport. What we want is a bigger sport, and we want to share it with as many people as possible. And providing these opportunities for anglers, especially at a young age, I wish that I had this when I was a youth, obviously, whether it be high school fishing or YouTube. I mean, I was lucky when I grew up in high school that I had 4 or 5 buddies to run around with that liked bass fishing. But
exactly.
A lot of
we did it when it wasn't cool, Kurt.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Right.
That's exactly right. So the passion is what it's all about. The love of the sport is what it's all about. And if it makes the sport bigger, greater, better, man, I think every angler that truly loves bass fishing is all for it. And you're right, though. It does make the competition that much stiffer, which, hey, look, if you weren't fishing against the best, then what's the point of fishing at all, right? From a competitive standpoint. So it's great stuff.
Right.
Hank, thank you so much for taking time to be with us here on BassEdge Radio for this episode. And we hope to continue to see this growth and continue to talk about the combine. Maybe, Aaron, we'll have to have a little bit of a follow-up on some of the results and happenings that went down there at BASS in Decatur, Alabama. Again, this event is September 16th through the 18th. And y'all stay tuned. We're going to be right back with our feature angler spotlight.
This is MLF Pro Circuit Angler, Kyle Gillis.
I'm Pro Angler Bill McDonald.
This is MLF BPT Pro Jacob Wheeler.
This is MLF Pro Circuit Angler Kyle Cordiano.
I am Pro Angler Cole Floyd. Stay tuned for more BassEdge Radio.
Know the importance of protecting your investments, so why use anything else other than the original and toughest DIY keel protector for your boat, Megaware KeelGuard. Grinding sand, abrasive rocks, and concrete ramps are no match for our exclusive contoured edge and patented technology. Megaware KeelGuard keel protectors are made tough and made to stick. Their do-it-yourself installation takes less than an hour, providing the longest-lasting, most dependable keel protection for your boat, guaranteed for life. Developed specifically by boat builders offering the best keel protection in the industry. Also from Megaware KeelGuard, Skeg Guard, Flex Step Pro, and Pontoon Guard. So give your boat the performance edge. Put on the protection the pros pick. Megaware KeelGuard.
Aaron, man, I'm excited to have this angler on our program. We kind of come from the same roots over there on the East Coast, tidal water fisheries. But, man, I'm totally digging his social media vibe. Very informative with some added sarcasm. It's fun to watch, man. Definitely my kind of humor. He has been not sarcastic catching fish, though, man. This guy's been on a freaking tear. MLF Pro Circuit angler, qualifying for the title championship the last 4 years in a row. Obviously winning the Toyota Series a couple of years ago as well. Busted 100 pounds at the title event at Sturgeon Bay as well in 2020. A big BassEdge welcome to MLF Pro, Kurt Mitchell. Great to have you on the show, Kurt.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Well, Kurt Mitchell, this is Aaron, and I just want to throw out there, I respect the heck out of your workout program. I'm not a TikToker. Everybody knows I am not on social media at all, but I did happen to come across one that, is very impressive. You did the pre-workout drink, you're sitting in the truck there outside of, I think it was Planet Fitness, and sweating like a banshee, but it was your day off, and you didn't cave. You stuck to your training regimen. So
I stuck for about 45 minutes and decided I didn't want to go in there.
That's exactly. So no, in all seriousness, though, like Dove had mentioned, love your social media stuff, but you have came off another great season on the MLF Pro Circuit and finishing the title championship in the top 5 for the second time in your career. What is it about, when it's go time, the championships, those big events that you seem to line up well for you?
Well, it's kind of funny. Growing up here in Delaware, we don't have that many bass fishermen here. So like, a 50 boat tournament's about as big as you're going to get. So when I go to these championships and I only got, this last one I had to fish against 22 guys was the biggest field I had to fish against. So it's kind of like fishing back home, fishing little local tournaments is what it feels like. I mean, I know it's a much bigger scale, but in my head, for whatever reason, it feels like a smaller tournament, even though it's more money. And I really don't know why, but I don't know, this kind of feels like home when I'm fishing a small tournament like that.
So mentally, it's a comfort level, like 20 some guys. I can take these jokers.
Yeah. All you got to do is be half of them to qualify for the next round. It seems pretty easy.
Right, yeah. It's an interesting deal there with the title. They took away this year. They didn't do the full catchway release. They went with the 5 biggest as the typical series in the pro circuit evolves, but they still had the group set up. So that's why Kurt Mitchell's mentioning, those smaller groups. And then finally in that championship round, man, it's top 10, right? What's your mindset when you get to that championship? Do you feel like you're saving fish through those previous groups because the weight's 0? So it's a little strategy, is it?
Yeah. For me, last week, it wasn't, just because I had a horrible practice. Like, it was literally the last hour of my practice. I found a general area of the St. Lawrence River, maybe a mile or 2 section of the river that just had, a lot of fish in it. So I didn't really get to dial that area in very well until the tournament. So I actually I was finding new areas every day I was fishing. So
Gotcha.
For me, it was more fun finding more areas every day. And then the last day of the tournament, we got to fish all my areas, put it all together. And for whatever reason, the 5-pounders just didn't bite for me. I caught plenty of 4s, but the 5s and 4.5s and the bigger fish, for whatever reason, just didn't bite for me. It was horrible conditions. I mean, that's how it happens for smallmouth.
Yeah, it was tough conditions there on that championship day, and everybody persevered though, and still caught them pretty good, man. Kurt, you've had a particularly great run on smallmouth fisheries the last few years. We talked about your Toyota win that was on Lake Erie out of Sandusky. Yeah. The last 3 tournaments, man. I mean, I know you finished 11th at Champlain, but I'll call it a top 10. You got 2 top 10s at Champlain, top 5 at the Pro Circuit at Thousand Islands. What is it that you're, kind of jiving well with these smallmouth fisheries? Is that something that's come from your past, or is that something new for Kurt Mitchell that, you had some enlightening situation?
So it's a combination of some things. My first smallmouth tournament I ever fished was on Lake Erie on Sandusky when I was like, I don't know, probably 21. And man, I went there to Sandusky and I was so clueless, but then I caught my first smallmouth and it all made sense, like instantly. Like, and, smallmouth fish in general, I've understood them very well. But the big changing point for me was rooming with my buddy AJ Segonia and Matt Becker. They're easily the 2 fishermen that I've ever known, and they have taught me so much over the last couple of years. I have a lot of knowledge on tidal rivers and stuff. That's where I grew up fishing and whatnot. So I've shared all my information with them. With the tidal rivers, they've shared all their information about smallmouth to me. So it's all worked out pretty well for all of us.
Man, that's super cool. A quick shout out to AJ Slagonia. He's a New York angler, fished the FLW Tour. New York Hammer. Yeah, that's right. Fished the FLW Tour a few years, almost won a BASS Open last year at Oneida Lake. And yeah, dude, I mean, AJ is and a lot of people, you know, Matt Becker, of course, been in the spotlight a little bit. So, of course, an angler from that Pittsburgh, PA area, but loves that smallmouth fishing. Man, you pick some great company, obviously, to learn some smallie tips and tricks. So very cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, one thing that AJ's really put into my head is you have areas where smallmouth feed at, you have areas that smallmouth live at, and now another way to catch them would be, you know, live scope chasing bait. But AJ's really, really taught me a lot about where smallmouth feed at and where they live at. Two completely different areas for, you know, where they feed at and where they live.
So let's run with that a little bit. You know, I'm curious if help BassEdge Nation and quite honestly myself understand if I'm heading to a smallmouth fishery, what am I looking for specifically to be productive and particularly being productive at catching better than average fish? You know, you had mentioned, the 4.5s and the 5s didn't bite. Well, and Kurt and I talked a couple episodes ago as this tournament was coming up, you know, ounces make a huge difference. So walk us through what that is.
So when you go to these smallmouth tournaments for a Toyota series or whatever, you know, you're fishing against a bunch of locals. And those locals, they have a ton of like isolated boulders, little patches of rock and stuff that they can go to that's always going to have a fish. Me going to these places, I don't have enough time to graph and find enough of those places where the smallmouth just live at. So I have to go out there and I find areas where they're feeding at. The feeding areas can actually be more productive, but it doesn't happen all day, every day. You know what I'm saying? It's
sporadic.
I can't think of. Yeah, it's more sporadic for sure. But you know, those feeding areas can be the best fishing in the lake. What I consider a feeding area is just a little rise. It's pretty hard to find, but at Sandusky when I won that tournament, that was off of an area that I considered to be a feeding area. It was about 19 foot on top of a shoulder, and it just came up just to 17. Just a real small little rise, and in the mornings there would be no fish there at all. But you come there at about 12 o'clock, it'd be absolutely loaded with smallmouth. That's what a feeding area is. But they don't use it all day. Whereas, you know, boulders and isolated little rock piles, they're going to have a fish on it no matter what time of the day. There's going to be a fish there.
Kurt, your experience on these feeding areas, is the bait there throughout the day and the time? You know, like 24 hours, the bait's around, and just the smallmouth come up and utilize that. Yeah. That tabletop or feeding area certain times? Is that your experience?
Just for sure. For whatever reason, it's generally not the morning when they use them feeding areas. It's usually about 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock. It was funny on Erie. I found the areas that I won that Toyota series on. I found them in the Pro Circuit event the week before. And I was positive I was going to win that tournament, the Pro Circuit on Sandusky, Erie. Because I went to these feeding areas at like 5 o'clock at night. And I went there and I caught 21 pounds or 23 pounds or whatever it was in like 30 minutes. I was like, wow, this is incredible, because, you know, Sandusky area isn't that great of a fishery. And what a letdown it was when I went there in the morning for the tournament, because I caught nothing. Right. And then the day after that tournament was over, I went back out there later in the day, and sure enough, caught about 23 pounds again. And I was like, wow, I was just there early. And then the Toyota series, and I adjusted and won the tournament.
Very cool. Adjustment's so key, right? I mean, you talked about having a tough practice there, title, and just, you know, kept sifting through, finally found an area that you felt like had some fish there at the end of your practice, and then just capitalized and expanded it as the event went on. So, I mean, it's so important not to get too crazy dialed in, of course, unless they're just biting every time you go, but can't live and die on a spot. But
had some time to grasp over there. Where I was fishing at, because I was kind of just using LiveScope to find new areas throughout the day while I was drifting and whatnot. Those fish on St. Lawrence were actually in like little depressions, and all that current is pretty neat.
That is cool. We were talking about in the opening of the show and about, you know, Champlain, the weights being a little bit bigger than they ever been. You know, you don't see 8 or 15, 20 pound sacks out of Champlain. It's just one the way it happened. You know, an 18, 19 pound sack was really good. And if you busted 20, it was like, hey, every once in a blue moon, someone might crack, you know, 21 or 22, but they'd have some largemouth in their bag. Now you're seeing these 20, 21 pound bags of smallies, almost 22 pounds. Do you feel like that's because now you talk about these feeding areas. Anglers are really able to capitalize on these feeding areas, and those fish just with forward-facing sonar, and these fish are just a little bit heavier than the grass fish, say.
Yeah. Well, believe it or not, when I was there, all my fish came off grass.
There you go. So the answer is no, right?
Yeah, all my fish came off grass line. But yeah, the forward-facing sonars I believe that's the reason why these giant bags are coming through on Champlain. People are saying it's because of the gobies and stuff, but I don't believe that to be the case. The smallmouth on Champlain, they don't look like fish that are eating gobies. They're not built like a St. Lawrence fish, or even the fish on Oneida. Their body shapes are actually changing just from the gobies. Champlain doesn't have that yet. They're still long and not super fat. So I don't think that's it. I think it's just the forward-facing sonar that's causing these giant weights to happen. You guys are out there chasing balls of bait out in 70, 80 foot fish that we've never been able to catch before.
Yeah, absolutely insane. How can you translate, obviously we've been talking about smallmouth, kind of that time of year, a lot of the tours fishing smallmouth. Obviously we just had the Oahe Elite event, the title, the end of the pro circuit, the Toyota, all these smallmouth fisheries going off. Man, how do you translate, some of this smallmouth success for fishing largemouth down south in the beginning of this, late summer, early fall period? It looks like, obviously, you've had some plenty of experience too in the last couple of years fishing, some of these fall fisheries in the south with the Toyota Championship. I mean, you've qualified 3 years in a row. How do you feel like this technology and your success up north can translate to help southern anglers catch largemouth, maybe kind of doing some of the same fall transition behaviors?
Well, it's the same thing, chasing bait. I do it right here in Delaware in our little local ponds here all the time. I'll just look for bait. All my local bodies of water, you're not fishing deeper than 6 or 7 foot. So it's kind of hard to use live, but I do it all the time. At the time I'll scope around and look for bait in 3 to 5 foot of water and throw a jerk bait to them. Down south, you can do the same thing on some baits, in some pockets or whatnot. You can just put the trolling motor on high and just start looking for bait. Right now, with the technology we have, that's the easiest way to catch bass right now. Can't be any easier than just going around looking for bait.
Right. Well, I tell you what, Kurt, giving up the goods here on BassEdge. We're going to power pole down for a quick break, and we'll be back right after this message.
Patented in 2000, perfected over years of testing and real-world punishment, the Power Pole is the ultimate shallow water boat positioning tool. Swift. Power Pole deploys in seconds from anywhere in your boat. Virtually silent. Power Pole won't spook wary fish. Secure in strong currents or gusting winds in up to 8 feet of water. Engineered to take it with a lifetime unconditional replacement guarantee on the spike. Power Pole. Swift. Silent. Secure. Visit powerpole.com to find a dealer near you.
BassEdge is presented in part by Mercury Marine, returning with MLF Pro Circuit angler Kurt Mitchell in this episode's featured angler spotlight. Mercury Marine, go boldly.
Kurt, kind of want to break down some geography real quick, man. You're obviously, I mentioned in the opening, from the East Coast tidal fisheries, growing up there in Delaware. First off, from a local perspective, was there any anglers you were able to look up to that fished on the national scene from Delaware, other than, when you came through?
So from Maryland, yeah. There were some anglers from Maryland. There's only been one angler from Delaware that actually lived in Delaware. His name was Jim Fields. He didn't fish like the Elite Series. He fished like Opens and Redmans and stuff.
Okay.
But he did a lot with youth fishing when I was growing up, and he helped me out a ton. We had a guy named Fabian Rodriguez.
Yep.
I fished against him. He fished the Elites one or 2 years there.
Yeah, I remember he came up through the Bass Nation, I think, right?
Yeah, really good guy, good fisherman. But other than those two, Brian Schmidt, obviously, he obviously hard enough to look up to Brian Schmidt when you're living in Delaware. We fish the same general bodies of water.
So it sounds like you're meshing Maryland and Delaware, kind of all the same place, more or less. Is that what you're thought?
Kinda. The only difference between Delaware and Maryland is I got to drive over a bridge if I want to go fishing anywhere. I got to go over the Bay Bridge everywhere I go.
Right.
Because we're on.
So you're not claiming South Jersey at all, though, even though it's pretty close.
Oh, no, a little bit. No, Delaware, Maryland, nothing in Jersey. We got nothing to do with Jersey.
Right. Totally different foreign country over there, right?
Oh, I've only been there once or twice in my life.
That's freaking awesome, man. I love the obviously from Milford, Delaware. I think that's your hometown, right?
Yep.
And and you've been able to last couple of years been able to really work with some local businesses as well. I noticed, Southern States part of your partnership package, and Frozen Farmer, man. That's like an ice cream deal, right?
Yeah, it's they were actually on the TV show Shark Tank.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, they're actually becoming quite a big deal now. They're in all the Costco's, all the Walmarts. It's actually really good stuff. You ought to check it out sometime.
Absolutely. I'm going to go fish the upper Chesapeake, so I'll be sure to grab some Frozen Farmer while I'm in the area.
Absolutely. You need it. It's delicious.
That's super cool,
man.
Yeah,
that's what I did last year as far as sponsors. It's so hard to get sponsors through bait companies now. The pie of fishing, if you look at fishing as a pie, there's only so many pieces you can get. There's so many anglers. So last year I really just put a lot of focus on what kind of sponsors I can get locally here, and it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Well, I like to see that. I like to see local businesses helping local anglers, and then local businesses become more recognized and bigger because of that help. I mean, I know that I would have never known Frozen Farmer. Of course, I've heard of Southern States. Obviously, most of us that live a little bit out in the country know all about Southern States. But yeah, it's awesome, man. You were talking a little bit earlier about the Delaware, Maryland kind of connection there and crossing the Bay Bridge, or maybe, I guess you don't cross the Delaware Bay much since you're not over there in Jersey a whole lot, but man, you cut your teeth over there. You begin seeing some fall changeover in the month of September. How will you best target that late summer, early fall fishing on tidal fisheries?
Well, one thing you want to do is you want to pick up a buzzbait. This is the time of year when the buzzbait just starts dominating a lot of these tidal rivers around here. Besides Potomac and Upper Bay and Potomac, that's more of frog and spinnerbait. But yeah, right now, I mean, these fish, weather's starting to cool down. They're not really transitioning yet. At the end of September, maybe a little bit. But right now, the water's cooling down. They're just eating right now. So I mean, it's a great time to be on the water over here in Delaware. Most of the tidal rivers around here, besides Potomac and Upper Bay, like Nanticoke and Pocomoke River, I have here. This is the best time of year to fish. Is fall. I mean, for whatever reason, the smaller tidal rivers, they turn on fire in the fall, and it's a lot of fun. They get back in the creeks and stuff. You just whip a little 1/4 ounce buzzbait or 3/8 ounce buzzbait around, and you just catch the crap out of them. It's pretty fun stuff.
Kurt, you had mentioned, really a lot of the cooler weather changes kind of takes place more, I guess, in the month of October. Are there things that you can share with BassEdge that man, if this is one way to pick up on recognizing that the change is coming before maybe other anglers do, or there certain litmus tests or things with nature that you're looking for when that is coming?
Yeah, just bait. Seeing bait flicker on the surface is a big indicator that the bait's moving back to the creeks. I mean, that's the whole deal with these fisheries or anywhere, any kind of fishing. It's all about the bait, and we start seeing bait flickering towards the mouths of creeks and whatnot. It's time to start breaking out the poppers and the buzz baits and getting back in the creeks and start catching some of them fish that first transition back there. Other than that, though, I mean, just like with Potomac, you can just use your eyes. You can just go back in the creeks and the water's clear enough. You can see, you can see the fish swimming. It's not too difficult to figure it out. But yeah, I mean, there's not too much science to it. Just go back in the creeks and start fishing. And if you get bit, and they'll be back there. And if you don't, just go back out to summer haunts.
And one quick question on I know you mentioned 1/4 3/8 ounce buzzbait. Are you the type that leaves the skirt on it, or do you put a frog, or do you dress that with something else, or are you just old school and leave it the way that it comes out of the package?
It's kind of funny. Here in Delaware, I leave the skirt on, but everywhere else in the country I go, I put a buzz tape on the back. I mean, everywhere else, but here in Delaware and our little tidal rivers, man, they like that skirt. I don't know why. I do think that the horny toad buzzbait gets bigger bites in general, but as far as numbers go, I mean, I still think the skirt probably does get more numbers, and around here for sure. Other places in the country, though, I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up. I prefer to throw the horny toad buzzbait just because I can skip it and whatnot. But yeah, like I said, around here they really like that skirt.
Kurt, as far as targeting quality fish this time of year, do you like the little small tidal guts? Do you like to stay on the main creek? Obviously there's typically a transition, particularly in those tidal rivers. Yep. Growing up on the Potomac, I've seen this. August, they kind of start moving in the backs of these creeks. The water's a little bit cooler, better oxygenated, with the water moving a little bit more swiftly in the backs of some of these tidal guts. Yep. How do you like to target a better quality fish? Do you like to stick on the main river, stick on the May Creek channel, or do you still really like to get up in the back of those guts?
I definitely like to stay on the main river to catch, a 4 to 5 pound fish. For whatever reason, I've not had a ton of success catching, you catch them every once in a while, but those 4 to 5 pounders, they generally don't go back in the creeks as much as the quality fish, like the 2 to 3 pounders. I still feel like you have a better chance of catching, your kicker in a tournament would be out on the main, but you still got to fish in the creeks to fill out your limits. But every once in a while you can catch a big fish back in some of the creeks, but for the most part I still stick out to the main river.
So what I'm gathering is the numbers might be a little more prevalent back in the backs as at the earlier time of year before the bigger ones make the move. Gotcha. Okay. Well, Kurt, from a career standpoint, the goal seems, crystal clear in the MLF Pro Circuit to make it to the Bass Pro Tour, where the payouts are bigger, entry fees, much less. What is on tap for 2023 to get you through to the Bass Pro Tour in 2024?
Man, the only thing I can do is just try not to bomb one. That's been my killer for the last 4 years. I go out there and I'll have 5 or 6 great tournaments, and then I'll have one where I just suck. I just go out there and I don't catch anything. Like I have no idea.
It's easy to happen, man, when you're traveling the country like that.
It's actually incredible how easy it is for that to happen. I mean, I did it on the James River this year. And the James River is a place that I know, and I went out there and got like 125th. I tried to go against the grain this year on the James River and fishing some different creeks that, other anglers weren't fishing, and that was just a huge mistake. I don't
Sometimes that can pay off though, but in this particular case, they weren't fishing it probably for a reason, maybe is what I'm gathering.
Yeah. I think next year I'm going to try not to go against the grain a lot less or a lot more. I'm going to try to fish what the majority of the anglers are fishing. That'll keep you away from the bombs, as long as you're fishing what the fish are actually doing, and, like the community holes and whatnot. As long as you're doing what everybody else is doing, your chances of bombing are a lot slimmer. But your chances of winning are also a lot slimmer when you're doing the same thing as everybody else is doing.
Right.
But, for me right now, it's not so much about winning. It's about making the Bass Pro Tour, because the entry fees being a lot less would be a huge deal for me.
Yeah, entry fees less and paybacks substantially better as well. So it's a flip on both sides.
I think fees are like $30,000 cheaper than what they are for the circuit. So that would be a huge deal for me.
Have you calculated the math, what the average finishes is you need to eclipse that top 10 in the Angler of the Year standings of the pro circuit?
No, I don't try to look at that.
Right.
I just, every tournament you got to go out there and do the best you can and get as high as you can. One thing I do is that's helped me a lot over the last couple of years. It's kept me in the championship, is that when you make a top 50, a lot of guys just say, I'm just going to swing for the fence now and try to win. I don't do that. Because if you just have a decent day on that third day, you can climb up an extra 20 points so easy. Because there's a lot of guys that will just bomb the third day because they're trying to, change up and win. You do that 3 tournaments in a year, that's 60 extra points. That's 60 points in our field is a really big deal.
It's huge.
That's what I've been trying to. That's what I've been doing the last 4 years. That's worked out.
I like it. So we're going to go to a listener question here real quick, but before we jump to that, you mentioned, I think, popper. You mentioned buzzbait. What else is on Kurt Mitchell's deck running into the fall?
Well, to catch that kicker that we were talking about in the main river, that's going to be either a spinnerbait or a jig, 1,000%. But other than that, frog, Potomac River, the frog bite can be phenomenal this time of year, and also punching, getting that ounce and a quarter punch weight out and start flipping around. That's chatterbait too. Chatterbaits for sure. That's about it.
That's now a hard bait not to have on the deck year round, right? Like I always have mine out. How about you? Got yours out 12 hours or 12 months of the year?
Man, the chatterbait. So I did out of the last 5 years. Up until this year, really, I was a chatterbait fanatic. But what happened this year is that now I've noticed that every single angler that I'm fishing against is throwing a chatterbait, and they're throwing it religiously. So I try not to do what everybody else is doing when it comes to bait selection, but you know, the chatterbaits, it's tough to beat sometimes. You know, that's a phenomenal bait.
What have you eased into as a chatterbait alternative? You know, it used to be the square bill.
Yep.
You know, they still bite the square bill some, but it doesn't seem like it's as good as it was, you know,
Yep.
6 or 8 years ago. What have you found a lure that you can let the listeners know about, you know, something that'll mimic a chatterbait, but just a little bit different?
Yeah, so I went from just like you said, the square bill crankbaits to flat crankbaits, the Optifo flat OG.
Oh yeah.
That is crankbait, and also, you know, if you're in grass, the Strike King Hybrid Hunter. I think that's going to be it already is. The Hybrid Hunter is the big thing in fishing grass now. It's not bigger than a chatterbait, but as far as tournament successes this year, especially in Florida, that Hybrid Hunter was a huge player, and I think it's going to continue being a huge player. And not just the Hybrid Hunter. I'm sure there's going to be some other companies try to copy that bait and, you know, redesign it a little bit. So I think in the coming years, you're going to see a lot more baits similar to the Hybrid Hunter with that L-shaped bill.
Very cool. All right, great stuff, man. Here we go. We're going to hit up a quick listener question. This part of the show's brought to us by Nitro Performance Bass Boat. This question actually came through our Facebook page from Bill Harlow. Bill asks, when finding bass in the late summer in the South, I'm always caught in the middle between the creeks and main lake. What would help you decide where to spend my weekend exploring?
Well, if you want to see some great fishing, you need to be out on the main lake. You can catch fish in the back of creeks and you can be successful fishing the backs of creeks and stuff. But for the most part, if you want to have a really successful day, you know, catching 20 to 40 bass a day or whatever, you know, just having a fantastic day, it's going to be out in the main lake in the summer. Those bass that are in the creeks there's just not that many of them. They can be big. You know, you can definitely have a great tournament by fishing shallow in the backs of creeks in the summer. But as far as having like a really fun time and catching a ton of fish, you need to be out in the main lake.
And is there anything in particular, you know, that Kurt, that you would advise Bill to kind of target those out towards the main lake?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to do it is to find some brush piles. I mean, if you're not real good on ledges and stuff, just get on your graph and just start looking for some brush piles. Throw a drop shot in it, you're going to catch some fish. I mean, there's really, in the summer, there's never a point in time when there's not any fish using brush piles. You know, brush piles are very prevalent in the South for sure. So that's what I would do. I would just go out there, look for some brush piles, and find as many as I can one day, and the next day go out there and catch as many fish as you can off them.
All right. Well, excellent question there, Bill. And Kurt, certainly appreciate you providing him your thoughts. Bill, get out there, try some of those brush piles, and stay out on the main lake and see if that doesn't put a lot more fish in the boat, like Kurt had mentioned. One thing we do need from you, though, Bill, is to simply log on to BassEdge.com, click on the Claim Your Prize tab. Let us know that you heard Kurt answer your question right here on Bass Edge, and you get that Midway USA gift card sent directly to your doorstep.
And as a reminder, Bass Edge listeners, keep sending in those questions for the show through our website, BassEdge.com, Facebook, or Instagram. We send out a post there once or twice a month asking for those questions to have a shot at winning another Midway USA gift certificate from us here at Bass Edge Radio. Midway USA, where they have just about everything for shooting, hunting, and the outdoors.
Well, Kurt, once again, just want to reiterate, appreciate you being here on this September 1 episode of Bass Edge Radio. Any thoughts or anything you want to leave Bass Edge Nation with before we close down this segment?
Yeah,
Frozen Farmer.
Yeah, Frozen Farmer ice cream. Go out there and get you some. I need you guys all to go buy Frozen Farmer ice cream. I need a bigger sponsorship deal next year.
That's great.
All good. Buy Frozen Farmer, get that company going. Next year will be a lot better off for me. But one thing I would like to leave for everybody is if you get a chance, go up to New York and catch some big smallmouth on St. Lawrence River. It's on fire right now.
There you go. Kurt, man, it's been great having you on the show. I think you got another Toyota series on the St. Lawrence. Is that right?
I do, and I tell you what, I'm pretty excited about that one.
Yeah, well, we'll be making sure we watch you up there, and hopefully you'll qualify for another championship there in the Toyota series, man. We'll have to add that one to your schedule hopefully later on this fall, but it was great having you on the show, man. Best of luck, and Bass Edge Radio, y'all stay tuned. Aaron and I will close up this episode in just a moment.
You
know the importance of protecting your investments, so why use anything else other than the original and toughest DIY keel protector for your boat, Megaware KeelGuard. Grinding sand, abrasive rocks, and concrete ramps are no match for our exclusive contoured edge and patented technology. Megaware KeelGuard keel protectors are made tough and made to stick. Their do-it-yourself installation takes less than an hour, providing the longest-lasting, most dependable keel protection for your boat, guaranteed for life. Developed specifically by boat builders offering the best keel protection in the industry. Also from Megaware KeelGuard, Skeg Guard, Flex Step Pro, and Pontoon Guard. So give your boat the performance edge. Put on the protection the pros pick. Megaware KeelGuard.
The PowerPole Charge Marine Power Management Station is the most advanced system of its kind available on the market. It does the work of 3 devices, a traditional battery charger, a charge on the run, and an emergency start system, all in one compact unit. The Charge lets you run your boat's accessories the way you want to run them by allowing you to monitor and control your power usage through the PowerPole app. It automatically devotes power to the batteries that need it the most for maximum efficiency. The new Charge from PowerPole. Power where you need it, power how you need it, power when you need it.
Wow, Kurt, what a show. Gonna jump right into it. Like Hank said, who in the world would have thought we'd have been talking about high school combines, filling a roster based upon skill of flipping, maybe drop shot, certainly academics play in there, but what a neat opportunity.
Yeah, it's super cool. I got to figure out how to get my camp involved in that assessment program. I think it would be great for those young anglers. And there's so many ways. I feel like that I don't want to call it a ranking system. I think that's a poor way to put it. But assessment of anglers could be accomplished, based on some performance measures or something of that nature. So I do feel like there is some basis where we could have, 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, 1-star. It doesn't mean that 5 is better than 1. It just means that 5 maybe has shown more prowess than a 1-star person. A lot different than it would be in other sports, right? So, but yeah, lots of growth potential there. Obviously, we've talked about high school fishing in the past there in your state of Missouri. It's very popular, of course, in Texas. It's ridiculous, 300 boat high school tournaments and a lot of other states across country as well. So it's a growth process and it's exciting, dude.
Yeah, changing, really literally changing, I think, the face of the sport moving forward. It's generational. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, but I definitely think 5 to 10 years from now, we will see a tremendous results from what they are doing and the prep and the preparation for anglers to enter in kind of those AAA events and become a long-term success. And then kind of taking it from there, we go over to talking about flat crankbaits for chatterbait replacements with Kurt Mitchell. That was another good interview.
Yeah. He's Kurt's always thinking, man. He's getting above the game and obviously bouncing things off of other anglers, and that's the great thing about being in that group. A nice group of anglers. He talked about how him and AJ Slagonia and Matt Becker kind of traded information in the past to make each other better on particular styles and types of waterways. Similar to what Hank mentioned, when these college anglers, right, they get together in these groups of colleges and then these teams of anglers, and they're all learning and bouncing things off each other, man. Obviously important for Kurt's growth. Now, I would consider him a top-notch smallmouth angler. He's proven that he can finish well on any smallmouth fishery, which is super cool. And man, I'm excited about his fall fishing tactics, man. Who doesn't like a buzzbait bite, right?
No kidding. Great advice there, and I found it interesting that in his territory, leaving that skirt on. Great advice to try, throw it out something different. Kurt, any closing thoughts? I mean, what another tremendous episode packed with a lot of little nuggets that we can take and actually become a better angler, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, even after we do the interviews, to actually listen to the full show and just kind of reaffirming some of these tips and techniques that we talk about and emphasize, and of course the featured anglers, and now with this new spotlight that garners a lot of additional information for things that are happening in the industry. It's exciting times, man, and appreciate all the listeners, man. Keep coming back, and if we'd love to hear your feedback continuously, whether checking that out with BassEdge.com. You can hit multiple tabs there to contact us and give us some feedback on the show, or hit us up through our social media. That's probably the easiest way, and obviously very transparent. So leave a comment there on our Instagram page or our Facebook page. We would love to continue hearing from the listeners. And Aaron, chalk it up, man. Another great episode in the books. Enjoyed spending time with you.
Yes, sir. Likewise, like Kurt said, stay with us, all things Bass Edge, through the social media platform and the website. For Kurt Dove and the rest of the Bass Edge crew, I am Aaron Martin. Looking forward to spending some time again in 2 weeks for episode number 384. So long, everybody.
The Edge is presented by Megaware KeelGuard. For more information on Bass Edge or to shop at the Bass Edge online store, visit BassEdge.com, and be sure to join Kurt Dove and Aaron Martin right here on another episode of The Edge, brought to you in part by Nitro Boats,
Midway USA,
Mercury Marine,